Hey good people, Batavia here. Welcome. So every day this month, I'm taking the camera out with me into the garden, and I'll be putting together a few days combined, some individual days, and the idea is to put together a whole compilation of the month in the garden. So with that in mind, I want to share what a morning, especially in August when the harvests start coming in, looks like for me as it relates to my garden. So I'm in Chicago, Illinois. I garden in Zone 6, and this time of year, what's most crucial to me is my average first frost date, November the 1st. So this harvest is the beginning of our summer crops picking up. These were planted somewhere in late May and then the earlier part of June. So I am picking a few cucumbers, a couple of squash. Planting in a tight space like I have, you really have to be diligent about looking for ripe veggies to make sure you're not missing them and getting past the point where they're really enjoyable. Come into the backyard garden, quite literally a handful of beans from the beanstalk here. I have one tier planted out with about 4 pockets of beans. More cucumbers. They're actually picking up, and I did my first batch of refrigerator pickles, which has become my preference. I'm still looking for that recipe for firm pickles that I can actually can. So next up, eggplant. This is the Vego garden bed, and I am picking a few of the long Japanese style eggplants, and then I want to show off the white eggplant. I have to look up, I bought this starter, I have to look up what size they're supposed to get to. The first bell pepper that's changing colors. Next up we have our bilicious sweet corn. We started harvesting it about 10 weeks after we sowed the seeds, and we have about half a dozen ears of corn that we've harvested and probably about the same to go. That was actually one of the smaller ears that I've picked so far. Golden beets. I really enjoy the gold, the yellow, the white beets. I find they're not as earthy as the red beets that I've tried. My favorite way to actually eat beets, most root vegetables, and some squash too, is to roast them. It completely changes the profile of the veggie and makes it much more enjoyable for me. So for my cabbage, the first cabbage that we're harvesting of the season, I'm really going to have to dig into this green cabbage to see if it's eaten up the way that those outer leaves are. Most times you can actually salvage the entire head of the cabbage, even if the outer leaves are a bit gnawed on like these are. My red cabbage looks great. It's the smaller of, I have 2 other heads on the other side of this set of beds that are still in the garden that I'm going to leave for just a little bit longer. So this is a method that I use for most of my leafy greens if I don't have enough time to work with them right then and there after I pull them from the garden. I'm just running some water in a couple of buckets. I'm going to take the entire cabbage plant. As you notice, I pulled the entire plant up from the root, and then I'm just going to add that root to the water in an effort to continue to hydrate that plant until I'm able to work with it, which was in this case the next day. I was able to get it cleaned up and then put kind of a loose plastic around the plant, I guess the head of cabbage I should say, and then add it to the crisper. So for the beets, I'm just cleaning them up to make sure that I discard any of the leaves I really wouldn't eat. Of course the leaves are edible. I'm growing it for the root, but I'll enjoy the leaves as well. This is the moment where I wish I had a neighbor with chickens, or I had chickens. Well, this moment comes up often as I pull all of these leaves off, and I'm going to ultimately end up tossing those. I don't compost, and I've written this in comments, and I'll say this, I'm just definitely afraid of mice, and I can't take the chance of them entering my space. Although I'm sure they're out there, I'm hoping that the stray cats continue to keep them at bay. We're going to do our first test pull for our carrots. These are about 80 days from the point of seeding, so I guess that's more like 73 days from the point of germination, because they germinated pretty quickly this spring. I tried to thin them out. I don't know that I did the best job. We're going to let the rest of these have a little bit more time to see if they put a little bit more size on. Okie doke, so our sweet onions, we started them by seed back this winter. I got them planted later than anticipated, and so I think that is the direct cause to a smaller size onion bulb. But I'm still super satisfied with what's going to be the onion harvest for the year. You see me looking around as I'm searching for any of the onions that have kind of that broken neck where the onion stalk is bent over. Those are the ones I want to pull first, and if they're still upright, there's still a little bit of growing to do in my mind, so I'm letting them stay a little while longer. So the last activity in my garden morning is to sit down and record a new episode of the Backyard Gardens podcast with my buddy Ben. He's over at Sandy Bottom Homestead on YouTube. Encourage you to check him out. And take a listen to us anywhere you enjoy podcasts. I'll also drop a couple of links in the description. Hope you've enjoyed this view into my garden morning. Welcome to day 2 of what's happening in my garden. We're going to split today into probably 3 parts. I have an appointment this morning, so I want to do a quick walkthrough, just to take a look to see if there's anything I need to be concerned about after last night's rain. So let's dig in. Things look pretty good at first blush. I'll take this tarp off. I have some cabbage under here that I've not harvested yet, and I just didn't want to encourage any cracking or splitting of the cabbage, which I've read can be caused by just an influx of water, after you have a pretty mature cabbage plant. So this is quite literally just me walking through to make sure I don't see any plants in distress, which again, it was just maybe an inch or so of water from what I can tell. You can see the sidewalks have already started to dry up. My onions that I left in there. Yeah, I think we're okay in the backyard garden. Nothing that seems too problematic. I have had a lot of aphids and bugs, gnats, mosquitoes, like an infestation in the second and third plantings of corn. I'm concerned that may impact the germination, but well, I guess we'll figure it out. I don't have many ripe tomatoes yet, so I'm less concerned about tomatoes cracking. I do have some color on just a few, and I made the decision to let them continue to go. We should be dry for the next few days, so should be fine there. So I normally stay clear of the garden this time of day. This bowl here is fogging up. That's how humid it is. But I walked by and I saw another hornworm. This is the 4th that I found across a couple of days. And so I'm gonna have to fight my fear and dig up my black light. Ever since the raccoons that I've seen in the yard, I've just been uber nervous about coming out after dark. I did use a black light a couple of years back, and it was effective at finding the hornworms, but I've been trying to search them out during the day, and clearly I'm missing some. So another reason, even if I could get out here quickly to get them, I still have to untangle the net and then put the net back up. So, yeah. But it's what I'll do for my tomatoes. So I'm just gonna clip this hornworm off. I didn't bring any string out. I want to tie up one of these branches because it has quite a bit of fruit on it. Dang it. I saw him just a couple of minutes ago. Ah! All right, focus, because he's eating away. Ay, ay, ay. All right, well, I got my bowl because I want to pick a couple of tomatoes. Maybe by the time I move things around, I'll be able to spot them. Let me get some string. Looking for a good space to tie this up with. There are actually a few I need to pick. Boy, am I rethinking putting these tomatoes here. Ay, ay, ay. All right, I'm going in. Oh, good grief. It wouldn't be so bad if it wasn't so warm. Good, just wet. I thought that the skin had broken. Ay, 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 ay. I wish I'd have put my garden work clothes on now. This would have really worked out if I was planning on doing some heavy pruning for this, but I'm not. Well, a bell pepper too. A lesson learned about growing tomatoes in this space. All of that for, good grief. All right, let's tie some more of these up. I'm gonna have to open up the next string. I can hear the tomato branches breaking, or some branch breaking. I think I'm gonna lose some of these. I normally do a pretty good job at cleaning my scissors or shears in between cuts, but this is what happens when you're hot and uncomfortable and you just want to get it done. You risk it all. It would at least be satisfying to know that I'm sweltering and I found at least one, the one that I saw earlier. That'd be nice. I don't even have a hat on. What am I thinking? Underestimating the amount of work. Welcome to the inner thoughts as I move about in the garden. These are the things that I think. We'll come back out tonight to see what we can see. Assuming I can find my black light. Oh, good grief. He's right here. Damn, they're good. Wait, did I lose him again? Oh, where? Okay, gotcha. After the first casualty of tomatoes for the year, I pulled down the netting and I left a gap. And you guessed it, something got in and got to a tomato, so I'm trying to be a little bit more diligent. As hot as I am, it reminded me about this tarp that I set up to try to keep the rain off of these cabbage. Everything in here must be super hot. That's the most I can do now. This is exactly why I avoid this time of day, based on how hot it is. Well, this time of day in the garden, I should say. So I couldn't convince myself to come out last night. So it actually is more like early morning, about 5:30. And so I got my beat 'em back stick. I'm right-handed, let me put it in that hand in case I gotta swing it. And my light. Now we're just gonna hope this is gonna be good enough. When I opened the door, I saw a stray cat. Excuse the sleep in my voice. And I felt like that was a good sign. Like maybe the cat's around, but if the cat's around, maybe the raccoons aren't. Right? Like, you convince yourself of a lot of things through fear. Alright, checking. I'll come back if I find one. You can see the branch there that's been chewed away. So that's where they were. At least one. Perhaps the one that I finally found yesterday. Okay, so not a normal, like 2 days in a row where I'm short on time. So I'm going to do just the things that I have to do. Oh, welcome to day 3. I'm doing just the things that I have to do. And that's going to include watering. I'm watching. I'm a little bit distracted. Late night, early morning. Where was I? Oh, that's going to include watering my green stalks. I didn't water them yesterday since we had got that rain before, but we really didn't get enough rain to really saturate them like I want to. And we're heading into a hotter day tomorrow, so I want to make sure that they're watered well today. And I'll probably come back in and water them in the morning. And then I'm going to harvest a few things. This is, I don't know, it's, y'all tell me, for your garden work, do you just work in the garden when you can, or do you have like a real garden routine? So I'm my best version of myself, despite the way I sound and maybe look this morning. But I'm my best version of myself in the morning, and I get all of the things that I want to get done. And that's like with my general life. If I could pack all of the things into, 5 a.m. to 11 a.m., I'd be golden. But life doesn't always work out that way. But in the garden, most times it does for me. I can get them done, garden chores in the early part of the morning, and then maybe I'll look at the garden later in the day, but most times not. Can't get all the things on my list done in the 30 minutes I have. So we're going to focus on the most pressing, which is going to be watering. This is kind of the gift of being able to work with containers and raised beds. So I don't need to come in and water my raised beds right now. They'll hold. But I do need to come in and water the containers. We're heading into, and I know, but I'm going to say it, it's our truth. We're heading into like 90 degrees tomorrow. And for Chicago, I've said it before, I'll say it again, that's pretty hot, and pretty hot for the garden. A garden that's acclimated to being like in the 80s easily, and even getting to like 70s as a high, even in the middle of summer. So with that in mind, we're going to get the containers watered. The things that we need to come back around to do is get these fall plants seeded. So the things we've been talking about, the peas, which I'm going to put an asterisk by that when we talk about those later. I think I decided on maybe one row of carrots to see like if they take, great. If they don't, the other carrots that we did our test pull from, we're just at 80 days for them, but they really are growing slowly. So I'm a little bit concerned about how much time I have left for the carrots to actually put on roots, but you only find out if you give it a try. So will carrots sown in the beginning of August produce in Chicago? I am going to go for a shorter variety. I'm going to do some turnips. I'm going to give it a go. I sowed turnips like late in July last year or the year before, and there was some like bolting. It's possible for every crop. So it may still be too warm, but I'm going to give them a try. And I have a couple of other things that I want to direct seed while I have some open space and the wherewithal to do it, right? All right, so let's dig in. Oh, and we're going to harvest the things that absolutely need to be harvested this morning, which should just be a few before the day gets on. So I found that these two squash plants, good grief, these two squash plants need daily watering along with the green stalks. Most of my other containers are on a more typical, like once a week schedule, to be quite frank. The ones in the front yard that have the, looking at something caught into spider's web, The ones in the front yard that have the sunflowers, they could probably use daily watering as well. So the intention is for me to water these deeply. I've shared this in a previous video, which I link, which kind of talks about my approach to watering, especially because almost all of it is by hand. I typically will do a 10-second count. I'm looking, I need to check on the corn as well. I have only grown corn like maybe a handful of years, and it's a skill to realize when it's ready to harvest. So I'm still honing that skill. Nice thing about the green stock, and with this particular hose, I'm able to just set it up here, turn it on, and let the watering happen. That'll give me a chance. I'm going to slow it down just a bit. So the type of plants that you have and the number of those plants you have in a particular container, similar to a raised bed, dictates how much watering will need to happen. So everything in these 7-gallon containers, about every couple of days, based on how much I have in them. These are multiple basil plants. So if I really count, it's 1, 2, 3, maybe about 4 or 5. Multiple plants here, stevia, as well as sage. Everything over here needs a haircut. I need to get to drying it. I did pick up some pine nuts. I'm going to do some pesto with my basil here, and then I'll pick the best leaves from the green stock that has basil in it, and then I'm going to dry some of this chocolate mint. My regular mint, same idea. So, but I love to make everything into a project. So I'm putting this off another day, and I'm going to go ahead and get these things watered. Just to note, as I was kind of filling around here, I was seeing how dry the soil is. Just putting my finger in about maybe to my first knuckle. And while it's not bone dry, it will dry out as the day goes on, especially as the day warms up. So I'm just going to give them a good soaking. I meant to mention I do have a watering system that I can put on a timer for my green stalks. So I hope to give that a try this season. There are a couple of places that I would have loved to put those green stalks that would have made it easier for the watering system, but not as easy for like the amount of light, growth, access. So right now, the ones that are along that bed are in the best place, I think, where it allows me to actually get to everything, but it's not in the most ideal place to have like a watering line come through. But I'm going to figure it out. That'll be my entry into some type of automated watering. Next up, drip irrigation for all. It smells so good over here. It's like mostly the basil you can smell. There's the lemon basil here that, I don't know if you all have grown it, let me know. I started it by seed way back in the early spring indoors, and it bolted indoors pretty quickly. And then these were transplanted as little bitty seedlings that again I had started. I think I started those outdoors, and they've bolted, but they smell so good once they bolt. So I kind of just leave them, and I'm sure maybe not the birds, but definitely the bugs will enjoy them. The flowers and the smell and all of that. Just checking some of the other containers here along this row. These just about, like, they love water every single day. You need to come in and do another round of fertilizing for some of these containers. I basically, about 2 weeks ago, Friday, yeah, 2 weeks ago now, I came in with granular fertilizer for every container that's along the banister. So all those 20 gallons, all of the ones that are in front of the kind of potato and corn and cucumber bed. And then I did, a week later, the pole beans that are in the front yard. This is me also keeping track of it for myself, like documenting it. So I added granular fertilizer to those, and that was it. Oh, so within the last week, I've also, that corn that's in the front yard, I also added fertilizer to that. But I have another series of plants that could really use a dose based on the timing of when I planted them. So I'm going to get that done. I really, at this point, I knew I wasn't out of making garden lists, but I thought I had a little bit longer of a reprieve. So I'm going to actually have breakfast with a good girlfriend, and I'm going to make a list when we finish our morning hangout. And then we're going to work the list. That's going to be a good use of our time. So normally it's like, oh, so much time you spend hand watering. And the idea that I could be doing something else right now versus coming out before I leave to do this is a little bit of an annoyance. But all the things that I'm saying to you all are things that I kind of think through in my head, along with a number of other things. So it really is normally a time of kind of solace, you know. So as long as it doesn't get too hot. Sometimes I am, like on a Saturday or Sunday, I'll end up doing a bunch of things that have been on my list for the week, and it'll be 9 o'clock and I'm just getting to watering, and it starts to get hotter then. As you can see, I'm not a fan at all of the cold, but the heat has, as I've aged, has started to bother me more and more. So I try to work around that. The thing about working in the garden in the evening is that there are more bugs out, but it's definitely cooler even on your hot days. We'll let that run for our bean tower, and this will give us a chance to check on some things, just kind of how they're doing. Again, harvest a couple of things. So this is a way this season that I've managed my watering, especially with the green stalks, because I'm not kind of required to stand at the plant. So that's super helpful. All right, so I've run out of time. I'm just going to do a quick walkthrough on my own of the front yard garden, just so I know what to focus on when I get back, and if I'll need to come out like in the heat of the day when I get back versus later in the evening. Okie doke, so we're actually gonna call time on this video. So day 3 ends with just a quick view of the front yard garden. I appreciate y'all spending some time with me. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to drop them below. I hope you and your gardens are doing well, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one. P.S. That's the start of day 4.